I had been meditating, and it was late at night. I was sitting out by my pool, and I saw a word coming across my eyes. And I call it writing on the wall, the wow effect. And so I just went in and I started writing. I didn't know what I was writing. I just wrote what was there. I was taking dictation. And when I started to think about the words, it stopped, just froze. And I called up an agent. So I said, I've got a book. He said, when'd you write it? I said, I wrote it in the last 2 weeks. And so I sent it to him that night. And then like at 5 a.m, he calls me and he goes, I want to publish this book. This is going to be a spiritual classic. And it needed no editing. I got hit in the head by a crane, my neck back, crushed the vertebrae. And I am sucked backwards at warp speed, going through the light tunnel. And there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no sadness. And it's beautiful twisting and turning and lights and sparklers and mostly blue and white and scintillating lights and all that. And I shouted, God, why'd you do this to me? And my 3-year-old son come in and he goes, Daddy, you work too hard. 3-year-old comes in and he goes, Daddy, you need play. So what is fear? There's a lot of ways these things show up. Blame, shame, guilt, persecution, betrayal. Love is the strongest force in the universe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Conquers Fear. I want to give a shout out to Jacob Solomon, who I worked with during the Bizarre Voice days. He was amazing. He was an intern at the beginning of Bizarre Voice. Gary Hoover actually introduced us. Gary Hoover is a really legendary entrepreneur here in Austin, created Hoover's, Book Stop, the original book superstore, Travel Fest, the original travel agent superstore. And when Gary introduced us, he said, I think this is the smartest student I've ever met at UT Austin. And Jacob came on board and went from intern to eventually head of marketing for all of Europe. And he then went on to be a great entrepreneur. I was an investor alongside Deborah in this company, Wisecrack, which went very viral. You can check it out on YouTube. And recently he said, Brett, I want to just help you with Love Conquers Fear. So he's now part of the team and is really helping this get a lot more reach. I am self-professed sucking at social media when it comes to promoting the podcast. I just honestly don't enjoy the promotional aspect of it. I'm doing this purely to help manifest the light and help us make it to the age of abundance for all. But Jacob is extremely good at it. And that's a very valuable skill. And you need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And so I'm really glad that he showed up. It's a very Celestine prophecy that he did. I'm going to keep this intro short. I'll tell you that I'm working through a book right now that John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, told me about. It's called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And I'm going to talk about that deeply on the next episode, because the next episode is with the same guest I have today, and we're going to really dive into what is fear and how do you conquer fear, which is what this podcast is all about. So we just had a really vibrant discussion about that today, and he has a lot of tips on that. But today we're really going to dive into him and his book. So let me just introduce our guest. It's one of my very good friends, JD Messenger, and this book, 11 Days in May, has really been one of the most amazing books I've read. I've read this now twice, and the story behind how this book manifested for JD is really amazing. And I actually read it in May. I don't know if you know that, but I read it in May. Told me. Not because it was planned, like, oh, it's 11 days in May, I'll read it in May, just because it just happened to happen that way. That was when my soul told me it was time to read your book. And that was shortly after the MIT event that I spoke at, where Jay Wilkinson was a part of that. And Jay came up to me afterwards and he said, I really think you'll like the book 11 Days in May. And I didn't know at that time that you and Jay had started to work together. Maybe that actually happened after the event. I'm not sure exactly when you guys started to work together either. But ultimately, it's ended up with you becoming the publisher for my third book, Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and Age of Abundance for All. And we were having an amazing discussion here at the home and some great hikes. And
we've had a lot of coincidences.
Yes.
A lot of synchronicity.
We've already had
synchronicity. Like they were just rolling off of each other between you, me, and Deborah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in terms of meant to be, another synchronicity, Shortly before this, I sent out an email for the dinner that I'm hosting tonight. And there were a couple of people that couldn't make it last minute. And I was like, there's 11 people attending tonight for 11 days in May. So we're gonna have a really
a lot to me,
right,
multiples of 11
yeah,
during, conferences, speeches, workshops.
yeah.
I always thought it was, whoever's meant to be there will be there.
Right, exactly. And it's a really soulful group coming together. I can't wait till tonight. I just want to first start with thanking you, because your book has really been an amazing, book for me. It actually made me realize that you can have these conversations with the divine. And since reading your book, I've read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer and a bunch of other books that have allowed me to have that type of communion on hikes. I can't really predict when it's going to happen, but when it happens, it's really beautiful, and it becomes a great teacher for me in the moment.
When we get these insights, to me, it's like a bolt of electricity.
Yeah.
You feel like whoosh. You can get a download in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
That'll take you an hour to transcribe or record.
Yes, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. Why don't we dive into the book first, and then I would love to hear about your background, what led up to the book. But with the book itself, how did 11 Days in May manifest? I know that, but they don't know that. Yeah. And it's really, really quite outstanding.
It's actually a terrible title, and that's because there was no intention of writing a book. As I'll tell my story about my near-death experience and mystical, and how I was a left-brain nuclear engineer, math major. But since you asked, we'll go flash forward to May of 2012, and I was a skeptic and didn't believe any of this stuff myself. But one of my, I call them superpowers. We all have an invisible gift, and I have a photographic memory. I see things, and so I had been meditating, and it was late at night. I was sitting out by my pool, and I saw words coming across my eyes, and I call it writing on the wall, the wow effect. And so I just went in and I started writing, and I didn't know what I was writing. I just wrote what was there. It's like I was taking dictation, and this went on for 7 nights, and it was on the 7th night where I was like, I stopped, and I thought, I wonder if I'm writing a book. And I actually started to think about the words that were coming across. And when I started to think about the words, it stopped, just froze. I was like, oh, I can't do that. So I, kind of had to let go and, have faith and just, take dictation. And when I was done after 11 days, my wife was like, what have you been doing in your office for 2 weeks? And I said, I think I wrote a book. And she said, what's it about? And I said, I don't know. I haven't read it yet. And I called up Bill Gladstone, who was an agent I knew. And I said, I've got he's been an agent for Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle, very Waterside Productions, a lot of spiritual books. And so I said, I've got a book. He said, when'd you write it? I said, I wrote it in the last 2 weeks. He goes, JD, nobody writes a book in 2 weeks.
All right.
And I said, take a look at it for me.
All right.
And so I sent it to him that night. And then at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, he calls me and he goes, I want to publish this book. He goes, this is going to be a spiritual classic. And it needed no editing. I mean, there was some grammatical, there was in the first print, we didn't really have a Chicago edit, and so the first print, there was 8 or 10, some grammatical things, and, some of the preposition things had commas and all that. But the book was published as it was scribed. And in August, I think August 4th of 2012, it was launched, and we launched the ebook. And I'll tell you about the in between the writing and publishing. I read it 18 times, and Marianne, my wife, was like, "Why do you keep reading it?" I'm like, I wrote it. I need to know what's in it. People are going to ask me, what's the book about?
Right.
And I had an inspiration, it's like a download that said, make the book a full immersion experience. And so to me, a full immersion experience was, tactile. It's like sound, video, audio. And so I said, can I add a music to the ebook? And they were like, check. They're like, yeah. I said, can I add videos to the ebook? And they're like, yeah. I said, can I add an interactive feature with a hyperlink? This is 2012. Can I add a hyperlink where if somebody's reading the ebook, you can click the hyperlink and ask me, the author, a question? They're like, well, let me check. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. Now, it turns out this was a problem because the only device in the world that could use that feature was an iPhone. Barnes and Nobles couldn't do it. The Nook, the Amazon reader couldn't do it. Anyway, so before the publication date, I said, I think this is a world first innovation. And of course, they go, oh, you're a crazy messenger. I've had quite a few world first innovations, none of which were my idea. They were an inspiration, if you want to call it that. And I said, well, why don't you check around the world and see if anybody else has done anything like this? So they did, and before publication, they come back and go, I think this is a world first innovation.
Right.
And I said, well, let's announce it as a world first innovation in multimedia publications.
Yeah.
And so the book launches. The ebook hits #1 on Amazon first day. The hardcover hits #1 on Amazon the first day. It hits #1 in science and religion, spirituality, new age, and personal development. Oh my God.
Right.
And now I was terrified because as we'll go back in time here and flashback, this is my coming out story about, being a corporate executive, submarine officer, talking about spiritual, metaphysical, out of body, near death, talking to angel stuff. And so I was pretty terrified, but so then I had to go walk around the country, went coast to coast for 9 months and share my story. And we were in Disneyland in December, and my phone rang, and my family did not like the fact that I was answering my phone. And the guy goes, is this Mr. Jonathan Messenger? I'm like, yes. And he goes, well, I'm so-and-so, the head of the publishing industry, and I want to congratulate you for being the gold medal award winner for publishing industry, world first innovation. And I'm hollering, hey, your dad just won some world first innovation. They're like, you did not. I'm like, yeah, no, I did.
Right.
And it was kind of sad because I go to this event in New York, and it's a 3,000 person, people. And there's all these people with tech innovations. And I won the gold medal, and
Wow.
these people are coming up to me going, how long did you work on that? And how did you think about doing that? And it's kind of like, do I tell them? It was like, it took me about 5 minutes, like it was just a download.
Right.
And of course I do. And of course that just pisses everybody off.
Right.
Who's been working for years trying to mentally, but that's part of the point. You see,
Right.
Our random access memory, our conscious mind is the most limited part of our brain. You know that we have our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious, and the unconscious is keeping my, heart going and, communicating. It's the OS, right? We want to mess with the OS, and the subconscious mind is the millions of programs that dictate our beliefs and all that. And the access to the infinite source of knowledge and wisdom. And so when we can open up the subconscious mind and tap in, we create amazing wonders.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to get into.
Yeah.
We all are beings of unlimited power and potential to create wonders. But part of the backstory we'll get into, which is the 12 years before this, between when I broke my neck and had a near-death accident in 2000 to when this happened, I had been spending 12 years researching what was going on with me. And, I discovered that Mozart didn't write music. He heard it with the ear behind the ear.
Right.
I wrote the book with the eye behind the eye, the third eye. Walt Disney discovered and created Epcot, from a vision and a dream. I've made world first game innovations from dreams. It goes on and on and on,
Right.
So some of the most legendary, greatest inventors or industrialists you discover, I suspect, much like yourself, you're tapping into something that is beyond your conscious state.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times growing up, I didn't realize that was the divine talking to me, but I know it was in hindsight. A lot of just eureka moments where I was like, oh my gosh, this is it, were divine nudges, in hindsight. And everything that I experienced, including the pain of being a nerd growing up in Texas, et cetera, was, both the love and the suffering to get me to this point for the most important phase of my career, really the manifestation of all that happened before.
Sure.
I said that I hadn't really experienced conversations with the divine prior, at least being aware of it, until I read The Untethered Soul. But the actual reality is through journeys I had, through psychedelic journeys. So there were many times in journeys where I was speaking out loud and I only remembered about 20% of what I was saying.
Right.
And then I went to transcribe it, and there were all types of references that I had to go and look up because I did not know what they meant.
Right.
But were really the divine speaking through me, which was so incredible.
In this book, I've had, over the years, so many people say to me, "Oh, this is like a Socratic dialogue. Did you study philosophy?" I said, "No, never." And they said, "Oh, you're referencing, Sanskrit and Hindu or Islam or, Torah or all of them."
Yeah.
And they'd all say, "Did you study that? Did you read?" And I went, No. I didn't, where did all that wisdom come through? And I knew we were going to get into the parables.
Yeah.
But came out of me.
Yeah.
My fingers, anyway.
You know what it reminded me of, although I hadn't read it when I read this twice in May, is it reminded me when I read the Bhagavad Gita of that.
Yeah.
It's like the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna,
Yeah.
Where Arjuna can ask any questions of Krishna, who Krishna in that form on the battlefield was the embodiment of God and is frozen in time and space. And it was like every question that Arjuna ever wanted to know the answer to, right?
Which, by the way, so the reason the book is called 11 Days of May, which I think is a bad title, people know what it's about, was, they're like, well, what are you going to call the book? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I wrote it in 11 Days of May. Let's just call it 11. Right. And then in the second imprint, the subtitle is The Conversation That Will Change Your Life, because so many people, 100,000, I got 100,000 emails, and they said, "Oh my God, this book changed my life."
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I'm getting all types of light from doing this podcast, people saying it's turning them onto this book or that book. And I'm sure just people listening to this, it will turn a lot of them onto your book, and just thanking me for being authentic and being quote unquote brave. And I always say, I appreciate that. I really do. But I'm just authentic because this is a time where you have to have the ability to conquer your own fears and operate with love at the forefront, because that's what humanity needs the most, right? For us to make it to this age of abundance for all. So I appreciate them saying it. And I really love all the comments I'm getting, all the emails, all the text. But the reality is I am compelled to do this. This is what my soul wants me to do. And I'm in a very animated place. My soul is much more embodied in my physicality.
When spirit comes calling, resistance is futile. It is. And I'm an executive coach to CEO to entrepreneurs. And I've worked with over 5,000 people, but in deep coaching, I'm sure maybe more than 500. And I look at their soul path and journeys through numerology and astrology and my knowing, because I kind of see and feel and know a person. And I can tell you, when you resist that calling, that something you're feeling, an emptiness or a hollowness or a unsettledness, that's that nudge coming. That's that your supercomputer is talking to you.
Right.
And the more the mind fights it and say, no, I want to go right, and your soul's saying go left, I guarantee you, if you keep going right, bad thing after bad thing after bad thing is going to happen. Because I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah.
Resistance is futile. Don't fight it.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful life over here.
Right.
If you get in flow.
Right.
And let go.
And it's trying to wake you up. It's trying to wake you up.
As in my case, I ignored it. And what did it do? It whacked me and broke my neck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why don't we go back in time before we dive into the parables? How did you get to this point of writing this book, or this book literally channeling through you? Like, how did you get, let's start with your childhood and go through all of the suffering, frankly, you had to go through to get to this point.
Yeah. So I grew up in Huntington, Long Island, youngest of 5, Catholic mother, German father. I had not a very nice childhood. I never had any new clothes. I remember the first time I had a new pair of clothes. I was 9 years old for my sister's wedding, and I didn't know what that tag was. I can't tell you I remember any birthday parties. I don't ever remember my mother telling me she loved me. I remember my dad. The only time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was after he whipped me with a belt, and he was crying for doing it. And I can see that like it was yesterday. My dad was an alcoholic who beat my mom and then beat me, and I was the only one left at home. And so anyway, rough childhood. Didn't know that or remember that or know what all those wounds meant or would do to a person. I went to the Naval Academy. I was one of the student senior commanders, a distinguished graduate in my class, studied mathematics, and became a nuclear submarine officer. Got interviewed by Admiral Rickover. Hey, funny story is he told me I wasn't good enough to be in his nuclear navy, and I told him that I was, and I'd be one of his best submariners. And he stood up and slammed the fist like he was on fire and said, "Get the bleep out of my office." But that's exactly what he wanted, was somebody who believed in themselves.
Right.
And it was a behavioral interview. He was pushing my buttons and I wouldn't take it. So anyway, so he accepted me.
Right.
I thought I screwed up,
Yeah.
by telling him that, and he loved it.
Yeah.
And so as a nuclear submarine officer, I left the Navy because I was walking around one night, 16 ballistic missiles with, 160 multiple entry warheads, and I started crying. I thought that if I had launched the nuclear missiles, everyone and everything I knew would be dead, and I wouldn't do it. And I thought I'd spend my life in the Navy. I mean, in my yearbook, it says, JD, my name is Jonathan David Messenger, but that's too long to fit on my name tag. So everything in the Navy and military said JD.
Right.
So that's how I got the nickname JD, juvenile delinquent. And so I left the Navy and became an Exxon executive. And, I did products pricing and inventory management. And when the Valdez oil spill happened, I supervised the Valdez oil spill cleanup and managed $1 billion and fleet of, hundreds of ships and aircraft. And so here I'd been in this business that I loved, and I saw 500,000 dead birds and 50,000 dead otters. And
Yeah. I remember that like
whales.
yesterday.
And I mean, it almost makes me cry now. And it is emotionally affecting me at this moment, and I was like, God, do I have to leave another company, another business? And so I led the first business process redesign when Michael Hammer and James Champy came out with business process in the early 90s, and SAP came out with the first process-based. So I led the corporate redesign for Exxon, which turns out no one had ever done. So then I got recruited by Booz Allen, Deloitte, and Accenture, and Ernst & Young, and I left Exxon and became an Ernst & Young partner. And unbeknownst to me, then I was one of the 4 global energy partners in Ernst & Young. And so, they took a bunch of Texans and they said, well, there's that short guy from New York. Why don't we send him as far away as possible?
Right.
So they said, would you go to China? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great.
Right.
And, so I did. And so that business, the reason I'm telling a few stories like the Rick Over, the one I'm about to say, are going to relate to my character and nature. So I went over and studied it. It was a $2 million business in 18 countries, Asia Pacific. And I came back and said, look, this is a $100 million business in 2 years. And they said, were you smoking opium over there? And I said, I gave them my explanation. So they sent me and 2 senior managers, and they said, we'll give you 2 years. So one of the things I'm really good at, which in hindsight is my natural ability to tap into ideas and insights, which I didn't know at the time.
Right.
This is 1997 or so now. My near-death experience was 2000. The book was 2012. So I had like this vision of using the internet, and wow, we're putting in global systems so we can do global product management, global customer management, global order fulfillment. So we could now merge giant companies and have tremendous efficiencies. And so I wrote the merger and integration methodology, and then I sold it and led the ExxonMobil merger and other mergers. And then I looked at, these systems and said, we can take back offices in finance and consolidate all the finance departments. So I wrote the outsourcing methodology, and this is going to come back to me writing a human methodology called Life Fusion 20 years later. So then I led all the outsourcing. And so I called up after 2 years and said, I failed. We're only 75 million. But in 6 months, we were now 120 million. I was selling 10 million, 20 million, $30 million sales. Nobody had ever done this before. They're like, holy mackerel, I can consolidate 18 back offices into one finance department in a call center in Singapore with standard processes and procedures. And so
seems like a good idea to send that guy from New York to China.
So they made me the CEO. And I was the Channel News Asia IT Person of the Week. And then I was the CNBC nominated to be the Asia Pacific CNBC CEO. And then the Singapore Prime Minister hired me to lead his innovation project. One day I got called to the Singapore White House, and my secretary's like, the Prime Minister wants to see you. I said, why? She goes, I don't know, So I go to the Prime Minister's house thinking he's going to ask me some big question about innovation. He wanted opinions on decorating something. I was like, why is he asking me how to decorate his house or something, But anyway, I became an advisor to Malaysian sultans and Chinese government, designed and implemented the first power systems in China. It's Jiangdong. I can't remember the name of the province. 300 million people, turning the lights on in an integrated power system first. So, I was a much taller person. I was very important back then. Right? Ego.
Right.
You
were playing the material.
Yeah. I was hiding behind the mask and playing in the world of form, thinking how important and smart I was. And
and you were winning that game.
I was winning that game. Yeah. Living in a beautiful house, 3 beautiful children, fancy cars, watches, clothes, suits, drivers, servants, whatever. And I had broken my neck in the submarine in 1985, I was supervising the refueling of a nuclear reactor on a submarine in Newport News. And long story short, I got hit in the head by a crane, snapped my neck back, crushed the vertebrae, C567.
This is described in depth in the book.
So that went through traction and healing and, but now it's 1999 and I'm an important person and I'm starting to hurt. So what I do, I pop pain pills and more pain pills. And by January of 2000, I'm getting goosebumps. I don't know if you're getting it yet, but I'm oblivious to the fact that this arm doesn't work anymore.
Wow.
That the nerves are being crushed, that I can't lift a pound, that I'm popping an entire bottles of pain pills every 4 days. So on January 18th, I get up and I go in the shower, turn the water on, and I put my arms up in the air to stretch, and whatever was holding something together popped. And it started, my vertebrae like twisted, and the pain was beyond explanation. It was like someone was splitting me in half with an axe. And I scream and I crawl along the wall, and then I flew out of my body. And my wife came in, and my body, I can see it. I'm like 10 feet above, and it flops onto the desk, and it flops onto the floor. And Marianne's crying, and I am sucked backwards, like at warp speed, going through the light tunnel. And it's beautiful. And there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no sadness. It was blissful.
And rooted in love.
Oh, it's beautiful. I can see, so like I said, I have this photographic memory. I can see every one of these events like they were yesterday. And it's beautiful, twisting and turning and lights and sparklers and, mostly blue and white and scintillating lights and all that. And I come out like in space, and there's a light. And I start going towards the light. And the light, it was kind of like this glowing orb, you might say. And as I got closer, it started to take more form, and it was like a dark purple. It's like alive, like pulsing. And then I would go through it. It was almost like I was going through doors or chambers, and then it went pink and blue and whatever. And then I get to the end, and it's like, bam, like amazing, pure white light. The next thing I know is I'm a reject on the other side. They kick me out. And I go backwards.
Well, Adventure Time.
Yeah, I go backwards.
Yes. They're like right 11 days in May.
Get the hell out of here, messenger. And no. So they take I'm in the Singapore hospital, they take bone out of my hip and they put it in my neck the doctors say we're not putting anything in your body that wasn't there when you were born. So no screws and plates, no cadaver bone, which means you're going to have a healthier recovery, but a long recovery, because now you have to be immobilized. And they had moved my trachea out. My nerves were crushed here, my trachea. So I'm like, I can't feel a lot of stuff. I can't talk. I can't walk.
All right.
So that's the
yeah. And you're laid up for a long time.
I'm laying in bed. I won't go through all the detail, but it took 30 days to learn how to walk and talk and chew gum again, 6 months before I'm really fully recovered. But during my recovery, I'm laying in bed staring at the plaster, and I'm mad at God. I'm a AAA battery. I got work to do. Mm-hmm. There's flowers all around me and cards, and I'm crying, and I shout at God, "Why'd you do this to me?" In silence. I'm like, "Why'd you do this to me?" And the door handle, less than 1 minute, goes jiggle, jiggle. And my 3-year-old son comes in and he goes, "Daddy, you work too hard." And he leaves. I'm like, huh? The next day, I'm like, oh, God, I worked too hard? Really? What am I supposed to do? In silence.
All right.
I'm saying all this.
All right.
Jiggle, jiggle. 3-year-old comes in. He goes, "Daddy, you need to play." And he leaves. Well, the left brain nuclear engineer math major is like, what is God? Is Grant answering my prayers from God? How many sayings does a 3-year-old have? What's the probability of him coming in my room in any random 1 minute? what's the probability of him saying something that answers a question which he didn't hear? So I calculate the probability conservatively as 1 in 1,000, and it happened twice. So that's 1 in 1,000,000. So I'm like, okay, God, okay, I worked too hard. I need to play. All right, now I'm going to say a prayer. God, I want you to tell me, what am I supposed to do? Jiggle, jiggle, door opens, Grant comes in, and he's dancing around in a circle going, remember, because he couldn't say his R's.
Right.
So he's saying, remember. And I'm thinking, I'm like, and then he leaves. And I'm laying in bed going, holy crap, that's 1 in 1,000,000,000. Remember what?
Right.
That bothered me for years, right? Remember, the answer is remember who you are.
Right.
Remember where you came from.
Right.
Remember why you're here.
Right.
But that took me years. So I spent another 2 years, and in that first, it'd work. And I had, remember, a left brain nuclear engineer math major. I would say I believed in God, or I had faith. I prayed. I was Catholic, that sort of stuff. But the truth is, I didn't, and the vast majority of people that say they have faith
Right.
really don't. We'll talk about what it really means to have faith,
Right.
to really believe,
Yeah.
and to trust and to take the leap. Because when you have faith, you take the leap. You know you're going to be saved. And whatever it is, starting up a company,
Right.
or a product or an invention. So I'm having out-of-body experiences. I'm living with 1 foot in my physical world and 1 foot in the invisible world.
Like ever since your near-death experience.
Right.
That's happened.
And so I'll be sitting in my chair and I'll have a vision, like a video play. And the first one was a funeral, a Chinese funeral. I saw a hearse and all that. 2 days later, I'm walking, going to lunch, and boom, there it is. Exactly from the angle, I'm like, whoa. And then I saw terrorist activities, which really scared me, and they came true. And then I had a client, and I had the vision that the company was going to go blind because they were doing a system integration, and they turned the old system off before testing the new system. I called that CEO at like 6 a.m. saying, don't turn your old system off. And they're like, what's the matter with you? I'm the CEO of Earth. Saying, no, I'm advising the prime minister. I sound like a crazy person.
Right.
Of course, he thinks I'm crazy and tells me I need to go on a vacation. And of course, he turns the system off in his system, and the company crashes. They lose all control, banking account. They almost went bankrupt.
Wow.
So one day I see an angel float down. It turns out it was Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. And it's like I'm seeing this spirit who's an androgynous being, beautiful, like feminine face, long flowing hair. I can see it like today, right here. Like in a green toga, half a body, masculine. I go like this, putting my hand through it.
Right.
And he's just like smiling at me, and he tells me something to do, and we'll get to that later. But I think I'm going crazy.
Right.
I really do. I quit my job, and I have to go search for answers. So I'll pause there. And
yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about that journey because I know you went on a long, what I'm going to call a soul quest. My real soul quest, I would say, I would definitely say that I found my divine purpose when I was 7. Like my purpose has always been to create a better world through technology. Judaism is all about tikkun olam, to repair the world. And I know that that's what I'm meant to do in this lifetime. And now I'm at the ultimate manifestation of that purpose.
Well, you're at the third act in the hero's journey.
Exactly. And so I found that early. I did have voices talking to me very early on, rooting me on. And
Go, Brett, go.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is the right thing. And that allowed me to get through a lot of forces around me telling me that I was ruining my life. Not my mom. My mom always completely embraced it. She knew I was rooted in my purpose. She knew I'd found my mission in life, but a lot of other forces, the kids at school, the extended family members telling my mom that I didn't know how to do anything else but program, and that's all I did. My third grade teacher who had an intervention with my mom. I didn't find out about this until I was in my 20s, where she literally held her by the shoulders and she said, "Your son is going to be a loser. All he decided to do is work on the computer."
All the greatest things that I am most proud of that were incredible creations and innovations, every single time somebody told me I was an idiot
Right.
or crazy.
Yes.
Every time.
Yeah.
And I love it now when somebody tells me that,
Yes.
because that means I thought of something or I have an idea, wherever it came from, me or beyond, that is so far out of the realm of someone else's consciousness, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great sign.
I was told I was an idiot for core metrics. That was a $300 million outcome. I was told I was an idiot for Bizarre Voice. That was $1 billion outcome, right? I was told I was an idiot for Data.World. ServiceNow bought the company on 7/7. So it's, I've got a long history of being called an idiot or being called a nerd. But I've always known that was my purpose. And by the way, I want to make a point of this. I literally don't have a single bit of hatred in my heart for any of that. Any of the people that picked on me when I was a kid at all. Like I don't think about them in any type of mean way. It is part of the human experience. I mean, part of the human experience is, in the world of form, is this consistency bias of like, oh, you're straying away from the herd. Like, what are you doing? Like, get back. I loved, there's that movie, what was that movie called? Nick Cage was the actor for it. It was a caveman story. I'll think of the name in a moment, but he was the caveman that was so brave that he went outside the cave.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull story.
It's a Jonathan Livingston Seagull story, which I actually covered in the episode 20 with Mike Maples Jr. That was a fantastic episode. That was his favorite book growing up, the book that his dad used to always read to him about, the power of possibility. And that's a very spiritual book, actually.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really, really great one. But he basically, transcended that and brought humanity out of the caves. But everybody thought he was crazy, like you're going to get killed for it. It was his daughter that was the one that brought him out of it, kicking and screaming into the light. So this is a story as old as, human history on Earth, I think.
Well, you mentioned the wounds. I don't have any animosity, anger, or hatred now, but I did.
Of course. At the time,
what happened was, so I quit my job and I go on my quest, and I start, I go through 50 or 100 books, Self Matters by Dr. Phil, and but a bunch of things, miraculous things started happening. One is, I think you talked to one of your guests about many lives, many masters.
Mm-hmm.
On the last day when I was in the office, you've heard this story, but
I love it. I love this.
I'm in my office as the CEO. It's the last day or second to last day, and I'm looking at all my awards and medals and silver platters and whatever, and I'm thinking, doesn't mean anything to me, I've got all kinds of stuff, and I look at my bookshelf of my credenza, and their books are in height formation, and one of them's out of height formation, So I go there and I take that book and I look at it, and it was Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know where I got it. I didn't buy it. Somebody gave it to me.
Right.
Psychologists talking about past life regressions. And this is crazy. Put it back on the bookshelf. And a woman comes in my office to say goodbye, and her name is Pearlie. Her husband had had cancer, and I let her take off from work with pay. She ended up taking like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. And she was very grateful, sad I was leaving, crying. And as she turns to leave, she reaches over to the bookshelf, and I'm like watching this like in slow motion,
All
and
right.
she pulls out a book, and she hands it to me and says, "You've got to read this book." And it's Many Lives, Many Masters. Well, okay. All right. Math major,
Right.
1 in 50 is what? 2%, right? What's the chance of she picks up a book, I pick up a book? What's the chance either one of us picked up a book and multiply that together? And you're like, well, this is 1 of the 1,000 or something
All right.
that this even happened. I'm like, well, that was weird. So I throw it in my bag and I go home, and I have nothing to do because I'm not working anymore, really. And so I go to watch TV, which I'd never done. I mean, I might not have watched TV in 6 months.
All right. Yeah.
So I go
too busy.
sit in the chair. It's like 9 o'clock at night. I'm in Singapore. Most of the channels aren't English. We've got maids that watch whatever language channel they're watching. I don't know what, And so I turn the TV on. Of course, there's an English channel. And there's a teacher. The show ends up being 90210, but I don't know that at the time.
Yeah. Deborah and I used to watch that.
There's a woman walking around. She's a teacher in a classroom, and she's handing out a book. And she says, today we're going to be talking about this book. And it's Many Lives, Many Masters.
All right.
All right. Like, I scream.
Right.
Because the math man is already, what's the chance I turned on the TV? What's the chance that there was anybody talking about a book?
Yeah.
And then any of a million books,
Right.
Right. A million times 1,000 is what? A billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I'm like, this is not an accident.
Right.
I read through that book right away.
Yeah.
That night, read the whole thing. And of course, as you mentioned in a prior episode, it's about a Yale graduate chief of psychotherapy who does regression, finds out this woman is talking about past life experiences, which he then researches, finds out everything she said is accurate, writes the book, sells 10 million copies. And
it's a great book, and it's especially a great one on Audible. He reads the book, Dr. Weiss, and it's only an hour and a half long listen, but it's really profound, especially the part where, at least for me, what was most profound, there's many profound moments, is when she's channeling with the beings in the in-between state, the in-between where she's reincarnated. And he starts asking questions of these divine beings that are helping her decide which life to go into next.
Right.
And in the book, she didn't even want to hear the audio recording of that because she was just like, that's really weird. It didn't even sound like her at that point.
So let's share some of the mystical things that started bombard me.
Mm-hmm.
So the angel Yogananda tells me to make a television show, short version of that. It's the world's first entrepreneur reality TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done anything like that. I think that I'm going to help create the idea, and no one wants to do it because no one's ever done it. So I end up creating it, producing it, hosting it, and it hits #1 in its time slot and channel. And it's a world first innovation that then is filmed by Discovery Channel and shown around the world for a new entrepreneur who made an entrepreneur television show. Then it gets copied by Donald Trump,
All right,
who turned it into Apprentice, and mine was an uplifting, loving story, and he turns it into You're Fired story.
You never said you're fired on yours.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I'm having these visions of things that happen in the future. My neck, which was solid bone, and it heals. Because now, remember, it's 2 years later now that I quit.
Yeah.
It's 2003, 2004. I go for a checkup. My neck and 3 inches of solid bone, I'm like this. But I have been going to all kinds of healers. I went to, I'm doing Reiki. I'm doing yoga. I'm doing energy healing for a reason I'll tell you another story. And my neck, my vertebrae regenerate.
Yeah.
And the doctors they were the top doctors in Asia because, Mike, co-partner was a member of parliament.
Yeah.
I'm working for the prime minister. When they heard Messenger went down, they called in the best, you know?
Right.
And these doctors, they do an X-ray, they do an MRI, they do a CT scan, and they put the stuff on the wall, and they say, you see how your bone was solid? Now your vertebrae have regenerated. What have you been doing? You know? This is a medical miracle. Now, I since have told, once this comes out in 2012, you know, I'm now walking around the country showing my X-rays, and I'll bet you at least 40 doctors have looked at it and gone, this is impossible. It's like the story with the man.
Yeah, Jason Carson.
Who
He cured it
right,
blindly.
cured his eyes.
Yeah, that's
right.
So 3.
You know, they're going, this is impossible. The evidence is right in front of them. You know, solid bone regenerated. I had all kinds of other things. I'm walking down the street. Some guy in a turban, I hear shouting, you're not doing what God wants you to do. And I'm like, you know what? And I turn around, and it's like, he's pointing at me.
All right.
And I'm like, are you talking to me? He goes, you're not doing what God wants you to do. You know, another time I wrote a chapter of a book, which I have yet to publish. It's like a memoir. And the chapter is divine intervention real? ? So I'm sitting in a cab, and, you know, Singapore's the most dense place, you know, in the world. You're walking on the bottom of the feet. Somebody else is walking on the top. There could be 10 people 5 feet away, and you'd never see them, you know? So if the cab stops at a street light, and I look out the window, there's somebody I know. I go, hi. He goes, hi. I wheel down the window in the taxi, and I go, hey, wow, how about that? Amazing. Good to see you. And he goes, must be a divine intervention. I'm like, I was just editing this chapter with a question mark. So after the cab pulls away, I cross off the question mark.
Right.
So then another thing that happened is I'm making a television show, and one of my staff sells the Monroe Institute brainwave tapes. And she's at a holistic fair, you know, candles, psychic readers, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is weird, you know, I've never done any of that. So she wants me to come. I go there to buy tapes, and she goes, oh, you need to get a reading. I'm like, what's a reading? She goes, oh, Eric, he'll read your aura. I'm like, what's an aura? She goes, just do it. I'm like, is this like a psychic thing? I'm not doing that. She goes, oh, yeah, yes, you are, you know? Well, one of the things that happened when I was 19 years old, my father, who had beaten me, you know, he gave me a watch for my 18th birthday, which was the only present I ever got from him. And when I was sailing at Annapolis, the wristband broke, and I dove in the water to save it, and I nearly drowned. Okay, never got it, but I nearly drowned. I had foul weather gear on, went down deeper and deeper, and I couldn't come back up. So flash forward from 1977 to 2003 or 2004, and I go see this guy, Eric. I'm not believing any of this. And so he does some kind of whatever, and he goes, when you were 19 years old, you nearly drowned. And he goes, it has something to do with your father. Like,
All right.
what? I'm like, you know, I mean, no one knew this. And he said, you had to stop denying how you were saved. I'm like reliving the moment. I'm almost joking and drowning. You know, you're back there, PTSD. I'm like, how was I saved? He said, Archangel Michael saved you. I mean, over and over and over. I mean, I could tell you another 50 stories. I'm being bombarded by these things. I really think I'm going crazy.
Right.
So this is when, so I launch a television show.
Can I just tell you one thing real quickly?
Yeah.
Because this is pretty cool. Like this week I spoke at UT Austin, and someone approached me and has been listening to the podcast, and they said, hey, I want you to know that just a month ago, I was saved in the most horrific car accident of my life. And she said I was saved by an angel. The impact of the 18-wheeler hitting like with full force, I mean, the car practically exploded. I immediately felt an angel wrap around me and, with white light,
Yeah.
and I was saved.
Wow.
And it was just this week, and it's now my 9th friend that told me a near-death experience story. 9th friend this year.
There's so
9th
many. So with all these 500 clients I've had, I can tell you how many of them have had near-death experiences, and they don't even know it yet until I do a regression with them. I guess I'll tell you one more story because it's important about Brian Weiss. So about a year later, 2005, I see Brian Weiss is doing a training program in New York. I'm in Singapore. My sister's in New York. I call up my sister at 10 p.m., her 10 a.m., and I go, hey, Brian Weiss is doing this regression certification training program. Why don't we go to it? And I hear bing. And she goes, oh, you read my email. I'm like, what email?
All right.
She goes, I just sent you an email. I said, I think I just got your email. She goes, you didn't call me because of my email? I said, I haven't read your email. I read her email. It says, let's go see Brian Weiss.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, like,
Right.
Yeah. This is not unusual. We are senders and receivers. This is a transducer and receiver. We are thought sharing machines. I'm a part of you. You're a part of me. We are all a part of everything and everyone, everywhere, all the time. Okay, this is where we're going. Don't get confused, audience, with the phenomenon or the wow, that's crazy. This is a part of the true nature of reality. Where I'm going is you don't have a soul. We are a soul. We are an eternal being. We are a light being. And so these confirmations and experiences and angels and all that, believe it or not, they're happening all the time, almost every day with people who never tell anyone. I didn't write that book or tell my story for 12 years. Why? Because I was ashamed.
Right.
I was afraid people thought I was crazy. And of course, guess what? It comes out and all of a sudden, I'm a speaker and people want me to be a coach. And, I created the Messenger Institute and on and on and on. I mean, the amazing things that happen after my wake-up call is I went from living a life with a mask, hiding behind form. We have three psychological modes: an instinctive mode, like the child, we're the wounds; an expected mode, where we are acting the way we expect society wants; and the preferred mode. So I'm in my preferred mode now. You're in your preferred now. We're authentic. We're transparent. We've conquered our fears and wounds. We forgave, I forgave my dad, forgave my mom, went through the ceiling, do my regressions with Brian Weiss, whatever, become trained to do this with other people, learn how to feel wounds, find wounds and blocks, and we'll get into all that. And this is the journey. And then, we hit the third act in the hero or heroine's journey. This book came out 3 months after I started the third act, my final act in the great play.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you are now, and that's when everything we've done in our entire life is when, it comes to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I've had so many moments where I've literally been hit over the head by the divine, where it's like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And one of them I told on, I think it might have even been my first episode of this podcast, happened recently in the Grand Canyon. I'll just retell that story because it was one where it's just like so incredibly obvious. So I became good friends with this woman, Becca, there. And she and I still talk. She's awesome. And we were talking about our experiences since her dad passed away and my parents have passed away, and how sometimes they send us signs and
coins
and
pennies, quarters.
Yes. And in the middle of us was this guy. Maybe I shouldn't mention his name because I haven't gotten his permission, but Becca told me I could tell the story. And he, I would say he was spiritually curious, kind of like skeptical, spiritually.
Yeah, I was a complete skeptic.
Yeah. Because, when you're in the Grand Canyon, you have no phone access at all. Like, you can't get a signal, and you have no electricity. And so it's all just presence. And beautiful, beautiful things happen with human beings when you just have to focus on each other and just be with each other, right? And so I had so many conversations with him about spirituality and about my awakening and about psychedelics and all types of things. We were just really jamming on it. And he was into it, but, I would say, kind of spiritually curious. And so he's sitting in the middle. And I was like, what type of signs do you get? And she's like, she gives all these amazing stories, like the probability, like your math brain would have been exploding with the billions and billions of, chance of these things happening, pennies, pennies, just constantly pennies, like all over, like all these inexplicable things. And she, I tell her like one of the animal signs are things like, deer, goats, sometimes birds. And literally is the moment I'm saying goat, a goat appears up on the ridge at sunset, majestically illuminated in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Where there's 27 of us in the party. Everybody looks up at the goat, like literally everybody, just like this is just such a majestic view, including, the gentleman we're with. And I said, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. But then he says, okay, this is going to sound really weird, but at the campsite, and this is the only time this had ever happened in all the campsites, we went 277 miles down the Grand Canyon. Okay, if you've never done this before.
Yeah, no, I've never.
Grand Canyon Expedition Company, shout out to them, gcex.com. Amazing. I don't have any advertisers or sponsors on this. This is just me out of my heart telling you something I really, really enjoyed. It's incredible. Something to do with your family, with friends, people you really want to be with a lot. And he said, setting up my campsite, I found this coin. And he pulls it out, and it's so weathered, you can't make it out at all. I mean, it is like really weathered. It's like half the size of whatever it would be. And he says, maybe it's a Navajo coin or something. Maybe this is like really cool. They go and they wash it off. And they come back and it's a freaking penny. And he's like blown away. He's like, what just happened here? This all happens within the span of a couple of minutes, as we're around the campfire ready to start dinner.
Yeah.
And, I'm getting goosebumps on that. But it just I have some mind-blowing things happen, sometimes multiple times a day.
Let me tell you, can I tell you one of the most amazing, so these are happening all the time. I get signs, a lot electronic, emails, text messages, voice messages. I'll have a message on my screen, and it'll be like a message, like a text message, and you'll open it up, and there'll be nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll close my phone, and the message will be there. But there's no message from anyone,
right,
or no address, but the message is on my screen,
right?
So I had this one client. She, her dad died. He had built a road construction pavement company, big business, and she has to take over at like age 27, and it's not going well, and they're struggling, and I'm working with her. And we're talking and like coaching. And she goes, something really strange happened. I said, what? She said, well, my house is very clean. Everything's put away, and there's, I don't have things laying around. It's vacuumed, whatever. And I was walking across the living room, and I stepped on something, and I looked down, and it was my dad's 1975 American Express card. Yeah, that's like 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, interesting. She goes, oh, it gets better. She goes, I like put it on the dining room table, and I go to bed, and I'm in bed reading, and I roll over, and there's something in my bed, and it was the 1970. It was the American Express card again. All old and brittle, and I just start laughing because we were talking about what is she supposed to do to save her business, and she's like, why are you laughing? I said, don't you get it? She goes, no. I said, your dad is telling you to charge it.
Right.
He's telling you to take out a loan
Right.
to fix the business.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
these things happen all the time.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Again, you try to calculate the probability. What was the probability of Eric saying, I nearly drowned? I mean, what percentage of people does that happen to? At age 19, what's that percentage? Then it had something to do with my father.
Right.
I mean, this is at least 1 in a million shot in the dark, It's not an accident. How could that be? Well, the answer is that we hold all this information in our field, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah.
But these are the wounds, well, I guess tomorrow we're going to talk about love conquering fear. So, what is fear?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of ways these things show up: blame, shame, guilt, persecution, betrayal. If you're betrayed, it hurts your heart. If you're persecuted, you feel like you can't speak. If you are filled with guilt and shame, it affects your gallbladder. Anger affects your liver, and so on and so on. And we have in our system, since we are energy, everything is energy, energy is everything.
And that's true when you go down the quantum level.
Right. If I dematerialized your body and took everything out of it that is not solid matter, that's a neutron, all of the neutrons in your body wouldn't fit on the tip of a pen. So what are you? What is this chair? It's pure energy in form, held together by binding forces. Some people might argue that we've created this illusionary dream, that we know there are multiple dimensions besides time, space, length, width, height, time, And
you've heard my bit about Harmit Nevin, the head of quantum computing for Google, speaking at TED and saying the only thing we can figure out is computing in a different dimension.
Right, absolutely. So since we're energy, let's think of a laptop, right? A laptop's got electricity going through it. It's got circuits that are sending things. It's got diodes. It's got resistors, capacitors, whatever, to kind of simplify it. It's a lot more complicated than that. But there's circuitry to regulate the flow of information. What is information? It is energy, and the energy has bits and bytes. Let me say, the way this is working, we're taking these vibrations, turning it into bits and bytes, digits. That's why we call it digital. There's actually a lot of people that don't know that it's digital information, ones and zeros. And that digital information is turned into a frequency, sent through a light beam, and boom, right? So every video, every audio, every television show, radio show is spiritual information. So this spiritual information is in our body. There's no hard drive in our brain, right? It's not like there's a storage unit somewhere. It's in every cell. They say we have 50 to 100 trillion cells. Every cell has more programming than the Library of Congress. Maybe 5% of our data capacity is just programming. 5 gigabytes of programming times 100 trillion cells. That's a lot of programming. Still leaves 95% of that amount of space left. And that's where all this information is stored. So when we have wounds, when dad beat me, when I've been ashamed, when I've been persecuted, that information, this supercomputer, which is processing 38 trillion operations a second, 1 million times or something more powerful than my MacBook Pro. These numbers.
And it's only using 25 watts of energy. Right. I actually learned in episode 12 I did with Byron Reese, I learned that a baby is running on only 40 watts of energy, an entire baby.
Oh.
But 25 is the brain. We are 100 watts of energy right now as adults. 25 is our brain. So baby is just kind of like a brain, in a little bit.
So let me go to the circuitry, the fear, the wounds. So let's summarize what I said. You're an energy being. You have energy regulators like transistors and diodes. Those are called your chakras. these chakras, when they're blocked from wounds. So, guilt, fear, blame, shame, guilt, persecution, betrayal, dad beating me, somebody embarrassing you, right? That damages the energy CPU. And then that damaged CPU causes, an issue. Simple example, client calls me up. She says, I'm really struggling. She says, what's the matter? She said, they've been happily married for 17 years. Every November, she goes deer hunting with her husband. And she says, I've never liked it. And this year, I finally told him, I don't want to go. He says, why? She said, actually, I've never liked it. See, she was hiding behind the mask, doing an expected wife behavior. I'm supposed to go hunting with my husband. And she tells him no. She's feeling, it's February. She's feeling real guilty now, right? This is suffering, a self-imposed suffering created by a program that the wife is supposed to do what the husband wanted, right? So I said, well, you've got a lot of guilt in you, and you need to be careful because that guilt will destroy this computer, which will destroy your gallbladder. And she goes, oh. Again, what's the matter? She said, I had my gallbladder taken out last week. I said, okay, the gallbladder's gone. The guilt isn't. Now that wound is going to move somewhere else. So we have to help you release that guilt. There was nothing wrong with that. That's a program. So this is where you do like regression or other kind of healing. There's lots of ways, writing, affirmations, all kinds of stuff to help remove the faulty, limited, outdated programs. I call them flops.
Right.
Faulty, limited, outdated program, FLOP.
Yeah.
So back to love conquers fear. Love is the strongest force in the universe.
It's the highest vibration.
It is. The field of love is 5,000 times bigger than a thought, and it's 50 times stronger. And I showed you something that we're not going to talk about today.
Right. But it
quickly showed that the power of love can manipulate physical matter.
Right.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. I did that as an experiment to prove it. I proved it.
Right.
And love is a force. Now, love is not a moire. It's not eros. People are confused.
I'll just say that what you showed me, I wish I could drive my car again. But besides that, it was great. I'm just joking.
Love is a ladder.
My car now is just a little tiny box.
Yeah, I'm sorry I melted your Tesla. But love is a ladder of kindness, forgiveness, generosity. It's an energy, right? In this energy, the world is known throughout all time and generation and all cultures, that, happiness and joy, being authentic and trustworthy and transparent and kind, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Because
you're in alignment with not just your soul, but the entire universe.
The whole, whether you call it God, the force, the one mind, consciousness, it's all the same.
It is all the same.
I'm sorry to say to my Catholic brethren and friends, but God is not a person touching fingers at the top of the Sistine Chapel. That's what I believe.
Right.
If God was a physical person, which planet is he on?
Mm-hmm.
And is he here or she?
Right.
Is he in this galaxy or she in this galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
Come on, keep going.
All right.
This one friend, I was like, I like to tease people a little bit. And I'm like, well, do you believe in ghosts? Yeah. What is that? I don't know. Where are they? I don't know. If you pull the string down.
Yeah.
See, I wanted to be a priest when I was young. I was the minister on a submarine, besides being a nuclear warrior.
Right. Right.
I say interesting synthesis. Yeah, interesting juxtaposition. But, when I had my wake-up call and I started studying all the religions, you've said this in other shows, I discovered that religion is a man-made construct, that spirituality is not a religion, but all religions are spiritual.
Right.
All religions embrace the same principles.
They're all common at the root.
What is spiritual information? What is spiritual is invisible. Think of the spirit of a country. Everybody would say, oh, what's the spirit of America? Oh, we're independent, we're courageous, right? Well, what is that? Those are qualities. These qualities, can you touch courage? Can you touch love? Can you? No. You can't. No, you feel it.
Right.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
You can't buy it.
Right.
Sorry. You're going to get hit by bodily.
No.
fluid here.
I hear you.
Get a little passion.
I love it.
Here,
I love it.
Do we have a rag to wipe off the passion here? No.
So far I'm spared. I haven't been.
Yeah, I can get closer. No, but so invisible information that we think of as emotions or qualities, love, anger, fear, blame, shame, guilt, compassion, generosity, they are not physical, tangible objects. They are information. They are invisible. They are spiritual information. Everybody believes in spiritual information once you help them understand what it is.
Yeah. It's very true.
So tomorrow we'll get into how we find the source of the wound, whether that's, and at the end of the day, they're all fears, fear of being shamed, blamed, prosecuted, persecuted, whatever it might be. And once you find it, how do you know it's there? How do you feel? Because there's a big difference between fear and worry. Worry is okay, but fear is not.
Yeah.
And fear causes an emotional reaction. So tomorrow we'll get into the techniques and methods. Just understand now that things like that happened to me, not at the end of the day, it all boiled down to I felt unloved and unlovable. And I spent the first 25 years of my life chasing money and wealth and attachments to try to prove that I was worthy.
Yeah.
That was my wound. That's my message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my most important mentors, I was actually staying at his house with this beautiful family. His name is Bong Sa. He was my first board member when I was 26 for Core Metrics. And one of the things he told me when I was 26 is he said every successful entrepreneur had some demon they were running from. And I knew exactly what mine was. When he said that, I knew exactly what it was. And it was that getting picked on as a kid. It was my dad not understanding me. My dad always created physical products in the world. I always created virtual products so he couldn't touch and feel them. Now, before my dad passed away, he was very proud of me, very proud of my accomplishments, realized ultimately what I had done in creating all these things he couldn't touch and feel. So we had that reconciliation. But growing up, he just was like, what is going on with my son? Like, I can't see anything he's doing. And he's inventing like fishing lights and all types of products. And is a celebrity in fishing circles as a result.
Cool.
And he was very much an outdoorsman, which I have become very much an outdoorsman, just not as a hunter or fisherman, but definitely our favorite trips that Deborah and I do are hiking trips to amazing places. We love doing that. So let's get back to 11 Days in May, because this book has had such a big
flash
impact.
forward 12 years from 2000 to 2012, the book comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm there.
Yeah, and I love it because there's the beautiful thing about this book, like we were referencing a bit with the Bhagavad Gita, it's a conversation between you and, I'll just say, someone or something in the divine, because I don't want to spoil the book. But let's talk about it. When you read this for the first time, which was channeled through you, like, what the heck did you think about it in your first reading? Yeah.
I told you that I was rereading it because I haven't read it. And I said to my wife this week, it's taken me longer to read it than it took me to write it.
Right. It's so funny. Yeah. I think it was Stephen Covey, right? Telling you, what did he tell you?
It's Stephen Covey, because I had my radio show called Global Evolution, which between 2006 and 2012, I was interviewing global thought leaders, global theologians, physicists, Nobel laureates, all that, because I was searching for answers. How could my neck regenerate?
Mm-hmm.
What did these mystical experiences mean? And Stephen, when the book came out, he endorsed it. And I asked him, how long, how long was it going to take for me to figure it out? And he said 5 years.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was wrong. It took me 6 years
It took you 6 years to figure it out.
to figure out what I wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were for you, as I want to say the author, but I also want to say just the passenger,
Scribe.
scribe, what were the most mind-blowing moments for you when you read it for the first time, the second time, the third time, then 18th time?
So I don't know if I want to, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but their parable, the book is 36 parables.
Yes.
And it's who makes things, what is time, what is matter, what is love, what is death, what is pain, what is suffering, what is science, what is religion.
It's all the big questions.
It's all these kind of questions.
Yeah. Why does God
what is love,
allow
what is
evil?
war?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And in one of the parables, I'll just say it talks about an atheist. And so one of the biggest shocks in reading it, which was what I wrote, was, oh my God, I was the atheist.
Right.
Yeah, that was a big shocker.
That is a big shocker.
Yeah.
And
I wrote it,
Yeah.
But I didn't even know I wrote it.
Yeah.
So it unfolded. And so then here I am reading it, just as shocked. You could think of this book like a movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is like a movie.
There was listen, people are not going to believe it. There was no contemplation. There was no notes. There was no intention of writing a book.
Yeah.
There was it was a total stream of consciousness or subconsciousness.
Right.
For 11 days.
Yeah. Yeah. That part where you realize that you were the atheist in that part of the book. I mean, so I love Audible. And the reason I love audiobooks is that I can multitask. I'm very dedicated to working out, multiple times a day.
Yeah, I like to listen to your podcast, things like that when I'm working out.
Yeah, exactly. And I love doing the dishes and laundry. I really love it because it's more time to read, so it's I'm an amazingly domesticated husband in that way.
Good job.
I love doing it on airplanes, when I'm waiting to just board the plane. Boom, I'm listening.
We have so much time for this stuff.
But when you read, so this is a shout out to your Audible for this.
Yes, thank you.
When
Which
you
is
read
my voice, I read it.
No, you read it, and when you're reading the part about you're the atheist, I don't know if you were crying, but it seemed like you were crying while you were.
I might have been,
yeah, because
whatever it said in there, I was.
Well, when
there were a few times I was crying.
Yeah, because when you were reading it, I started crying at that part. It really evoked a emotional reaction in me.
I've gotten that a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of people have said when I started reading this book, because it's first person present tense.
Yeah,
you are sucked in.
Yeah.
It is, I am in this. This is happening to me.
Right.
Many people have told me.
So I've been thinking a lot about what would be the most fun way to do this discussion of the book. So I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I get from people that are not spiritual at all,
right,
and not religious at all.
Okay. Hold on.
In terms of, exactly. In terms of why should I believe any of that? So let me ask you a question that you asked the divine. Why does God allow evil?
Well, you have to, it goes back to there are things that are good and things that are not good. But everything that is good. Money is good. Furniture is good. Weapons are good. Nuclear weapons are good. It's just that what people may do with them, a behavior, can be not good. What people call evil. In the book, we call it not evil, we call it not good. Because just as in the teachings of Jesus, if the idea that someone is evil, that they were born evil, there's no hope. But no one was born evil. They were damaged, they were wounded, they were, and so it's kinder to think of a person doing a behavior that is not good because they're redeemable, right? Isn't that what we teach in religion, that people can be redeemed? So there's this discussion on good and not good, and that everything is good, but behaviors are not good. So if God is good and everything that God does is good, then how could God do something bad? Well, God didn't do the thing that was bad. You know, God didn't create the war. God may have helped us create nuclear weapons, but it was man that pulled the trigger.
Right. Yeah. And we have free will. We have free will.
We have free will.
God embodied us with free will.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's up to us to set the right intentionality. This is also with manifestation, you know.
And it goes on, and it talks about, say, your child, you know, if you want to teach, there's a parable, what is devious? And so a lot of people I coach, you know, you say they need more courage. And so I'll say, so let's write an affirmation. And it's like they write, God, please make me courageous. I'm like, no. That's not how it works. First of all, if you say, God, please make me courageous, you just told God you're not courageous. You told your subconscious. You said, God, thank you for making me courageous. I said, now be prepared, because as soon as you set your intention to become courageous, it's like there's 1,000 angels up there that go, Yahoo, let's go scare the shit out of them.
Right.
You know, excuse my French.
Yeah.
Because that's how you become courageous. So how do you become strong? How do you become wise? It's not like we sprinkle you with pixie dust. This is school.
Right.
We have to go through the challenges and the pain and the suffering to learn.
Right. Yeah, I've talked about on the podcast quite a bit that this is the Earth School.
Yep.
And it's the playground, if you will,
training ground
for our souls, right?
Yep.
And that the whole point is to allow love to conquer fear, manifest love in each other's, and ultimately really lift up humanity, like let humanity together ascend. Like that's it. Like that's the summary of over 50 books I've read this year. I mean, that's really it. And that includes change yourself and you change the world, which is a principle I learned many, many years ago in Vedanta in India. Why do we have to suffer to learn?
So let's make sure we understand there's a difference between pain and suffering. You know, pain is the result of having a physical body. Suffering is mental. And suffering comes from an attachment. And I'll give you an example. People can relate to it. It might not sound nice, but one of my clients calls me up. She's crying. She says, I'm in a lot of pain. I say, why? She says, because I'm pregnant and my husband said he wants a divorce. And I said, where does it hurt? And she stops crying and she says, what? I said, where does it hurt? Said, what do you mean? I said, you said you're in pain. Are you hurting somewhere? And she said, no. I said, so you're not in pain? Yes, I'm in pain. No, well, where does it hurt? And she's like, the crying stopped. And I said, darling, you're not in pain, you're suffering. And you have a choice. Now, I understand why you're suffering. You're attached to your husband. You loved your husband. Maybe you love the security, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm giving it to you straight here, but you are suffering because you lost something that you were attached to. And when you let go of that attachment, your suffering will end. So now you say, okay, pain is a result of the physical body. Why do we have to suffer? Because suffering teaches us that we're hiding behind the mask in the world of form. Look, we haven't talked about the fact that we live in the world of light in form. When we leave the form, we're back into the light.
Right.
And we are a light being.
Yeah.
We are emitting, sending and receiving photons. The photons are carrying information. It's talking to and manipulating our DNA. DNA is not deterministic, So we this is a scientific fact. Yoda was right. We're a light being.
All right.
Thank you,
Right.
Yoda.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the way. It's like I sound like the Mandalorian. This is the way.
Well, actually, you sound like the Tao now.
Okay.
this is the Tao Te Ching.
This is the way. There's something on the top of the book here that very few people, I don't know if you noticed that.
I haven't noticed that.
There's Greek writing at the top of the book.
Well, I've actually never had the physical book until today because you brought it for our guys tonight. But I've listened to it
in
multiple
Greek.
times.
This says the way, the truth, and the light.
Beautiful.
The reason it's there is because one of my experiences was I would wake up speaking this language, not knowing what I was saying.
Wow.
And
that's xenoglossy.
I wrote it down phonetically. And for years, I was like, does anybody know what this is I'm saying? Does anybody know what this is I'm saying, And I finally found someone, and it was after I wrote the book. And they're like, oh, that's Greek. I said, what does it say? And she says, the way, the truth, and the light. I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
I found an interpreter after the book was finished. And they finally told me what I've been mumbling.
Wow.
And so that's why I put it
on
the way, the truth, and the light.
Yeah. I mean, I would say
I'm not creative enough to make this stuff up.
Yeah. I would say that I've never heard a story like that, but actually I know someone who speaks in different languages when they're in journeys, and then it has to be translated later. So yes, xenoglossy is a real thing. When you plug into source, you can get all types of messages, including in other languages.
I could tell you 100 things that we have yet to talk about on recording or not of the information. One very short, without getting into the story, I was shown the construction of the universe.
Wow.
And then I wrote it, and then I found it on a website, and I thought somebody copied it. And then I found that man, and he told me he didn't write it. He said he took that off of ruins that were 10,000 years old.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's incredible. One of the parts of the book that I really, really loved is how we're a co-creator with our hands with God, our source.
We are all co-creators. You and I are co-creating.
Right. We're co-creating right now.
Everything and everyone is co-creating.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the book, spoiler alert on this one, it's fine. Because we're past this moment now. But, you ask, what is the greatest co-creation we've made recently? And the answer was
the internet.
Because it now connects us.
Connects everything and everyone.
Right. And it collapses
shared knowledge, and then collapsed distance and location have become irrelevant.
Right.
Accelerated time.
Yes.
Yeah. Level set, shared knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
To anyone, anywhere.
Yeah.
In Chad.
Yeah. And remember when you and I were first meeting and we first became friends, and I would say at this point we've become good friends because now we're business partners for Love Conquers Fear for my third book coming out here. I said, don't you think now you would say the greatest co-creation is actually AI?
Could be.
And
the next evolution.
It is the next evolution, right? And it only occurs because the internet came before with lots of open content around the world, all the spiritual text, everything's there. And now we have a moment where it's the first time in human history where I can speak to native language Japanese text or native language Mandarin text or any text in English. And get the answers back.
So now we're not only can we share knowledge and wisdom, but now we can speak. The language barriers gone.
Right. And the creative barriers gone, because if you thought in the past, and by the way, this is recent past because ChatGPT hasn't even turned 3 years old as of this recording.
Right.
If I wanted to speak to native language Mandarin text, what would I have had to do? I would have
call me up.
Well, I could have called you up because I know you speak Mandarin, but I, honestly, there would be a big barrier. I would be like, well, I need to hire a translator. I need to do this and that. And so my ability to be creative by accessing knowledge from ancient China, there's a lot of knowledge there, including the Tao Te Ching, it would have been a barrier to my creative ability to learn. My learning has gone up exponentially as a result of AI, because anything I'm curious about, I can immediately do a report on it and go, and I can tell it to go fact check. And, people talk about hallucinations. I think that's an extremely temporal problem. We're, again, not even into the third anniversary of ChatGPT. And these things are being worked out super, super fast. So some of the things that AI is dissed for today, we're not even in the first inning.
Yeah, think about how long it took. When did and by the way, that was the Mandarin was a side thing. He knows that I told him last night that during my recovery, I became fluent in Mandarin in 60 hours.
That's right.
And I still speak Mandarin now, 20 years later.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And
I don't know anybody else that learned Mandarin in 60 hours.
Like, I was just on a cruise ship, and there was a Chinese person. I'm like, ni hao, and wo shi migran, Megan to hen shao, or whatever I'm saying,
Right.
and she's like, oh, yeah, I'm like, it still blows my mind. 60 hours.
Yeah.
Now my tones might be a little off.
Right.
But anyway.
People are going to forgive you if you don't have perfect pronunciation.
So it's better than Bruce Willis's. In that, one of those movies he did is like, oh my God, his Mandarin was terrible. But back to what with the internet came out, and was it 95? It wasn't until 2002 or 3 that people were trusting their credit cards to put it on Amazon. That's 7 years.
Yeah, it was. Well, the web came out later, but I was programming on the internet in 1990.
Yeah, but how long before people really
started adopting
trust and use the internet?
Yeah, you're right. 95, because ultimately that culminated in the .com boom, and then the bust, and then the rebirth.
Right.
Yeah.
But even corporations didn't trust this stuff for 5 years.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It started out just with, either very secure military type communication happening over it, not plugged into the rest of access. Or it was universities and people that, message boards, things that weren't really secure. People weren't really transacting.
What else, before we exhaust our audience, what else in 11 Days of May you want to talk about? We've told them there's 36 parables, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think at this point we've covered enough in it. We're gonna spend a lot of time over dinner tonight with it, and the reason why is I don't want to spoil the book.
Yes, sir.
There's so many things that hopefully people listening to this or watching this will be interested in reading it. I will just say my plug for it is that it's amazingly deep book from a wisdom perspective, and it's all the questions you've wanted to ask, and you actually get answers to them. And it takes you a while to realize.
It unwinds it. I'll tell you this. The feedback is, if you get to a parable and you're stuck, it's trying to delete a faulty limited program.
That's right.
If you're reading 11 Days of May and you're starting to get agitated, that is false information stored in your cells that it's trying to dump out.
Yeah.
And so you go back and read it again. So many people will say, and by the way, you read every time you read this book, you will get more and more and more, and it will get deeper. And so there's several layers. I did get
more out of the second time.
There's quite a few layers. There's the preface, or the foreword, which just goes from the Big Bang to present day in 500 words. Then there's an entire book, and then there's a 2-page epilogue, which summarizes where we are.
Right.
So that's kind of like the story arc. But then inside the book, now this is me analyzing 6 years, right? Inside the book, it's going through the work, the great work, and the supreme work.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't really understand. The work is understanding our wounds.
Yeah.
The great work is understanding that we're a soul having a physical experience. And the supreme work is understanding that you have a purpose and a mission.
Yeah.
And,
one thing that would be fun to close out our discussion on this before I want to spend some time on AI.
Sure.
Is Do you mind reading the part of the epilogue
Absolutely not.
where it has a synchronicity with love
Absolutely.
conquers fear?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is in the epilogue.
Yes.
And so this was written after the book was written.
Yeah.
Now I've analyzed the book. In the hard copy, it's on page 235. We, the people, find ourselves at a once-in-a-lifetime tipping point, a dramatic awakening. A shift is occurring for humanity, and it is divinely ordained. It is time when the people must unite and speak out so that all sides understand we must leave behind the selfish desires from the world of form. From the Creator's point of view, never before in the history of humanity have so many needed so much, or so few controlled so many. The lovely corollary is never before have so many known so much or been so enlightened. What is transparent to the transcended are the ideas that created and perpetuated a false reality that previously sustained repressive environments. In the process of enlightenment, the transcended have shattered the preconceptions that long ago created the disturbance among men and women, and we have become conscious of what binds us. I'm going to read a little bit more. It is not so much that we as a race or nation must decide to consent to this point, but rather that we declare what is already obvious to the many and unseen by a few. We, the people, therefore declare on every corner of the earth, in every home, in every industry, that the ties that bind are far greater than what divides us. We hereby acknowledge that the color of our skin, national origin, political party, religious affiliation, or gender are of no matter to a supreme creator, and therefore ought not matter to any man or institution.
Mm-hmm. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
It's beautiful. That what you just read has complete synchronicity with a book that I read a couple of weeks ago by an author I'm going to have on, Jeff Birmingham. I want to introduce you to him. He wrote a book called The Last Book a Human Being Will Ever Write. And it's all about AI.
Oh, cool.
And it's essentially what we need to do to unite. And, it's probably obvious to people listening to this at this moment on why you would actually want to help me with first fear.
Yeah, right.
But how do you think about this AI moment? Like, in terms of the many pros and, the things that we have to, the good and the not good, let's say.
I'm inspired to go into a meditative state and try to write another book talking to God about why she created AI. I think that, you've asked a lot of your guests, are we going to make it? Well, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt that we have the capacity in our brains to regulate this as we have regulated and controlled any other, thing that, like you've talked about. There's no doubt that there is the capacity to dramatically leap forward in areas like we just talked about, translation being a simple example. There is also no doubt that there are dangers, as simple as, how do you know a student wrote the paper or read the book? How do we ensure that we do learning? But then again, there's great benefits like, oh my gosh, an AI doctor, I would trust an AI doctor over a lot of the doctors that I've gone to.
All right.
It's controlled, or a robotic surgery. Good Lord. I don't think the robotic surgery is going to drop something and sew me up.
Right.
I
mean, Da Vinci machines are performing surgeries all the time
so
right now.
There's a lot more benefits. And humanity is inherently good, if people wanted to cause more destruction and pain and suffering, they could, but people are inherently good. Yes, there are more people now, though, however, who are filled with fear. The opposite, their fear is conquering the love. because they have mental illness and they're wounded and they're starving and they're unemployed or they're targeted, whatever. They're coming out of the woodwork. But I'm not sure that the number is any different than there ever was. It's just that now they're coming out. But like any issue, any wound, any disease, first you got to know it and bring it up to the surface before you can cure it. So the big thing I think of then is, well, how do we use AI to help all of the mental illnesses? How do we use AI to help overcome homelessness or hunger? How do we use AI to teach people healthy lifestyles and living so we're not spending wasting $5 trillion on downstream healthcare when we should be spending $5 trillion on upstream healthcare? Yahoo!
Yeah. How do we use AI?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not excited about this at all.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm very passionate about it too. I mean, I'm mostly a techno-optimist. And, how do we use AI to solve energy? 18 seconds of the sun
Absolutely.
would the rays that fall on the earth, 18 seconds would power the entire world for well over a year. All of the capacity.
You know far more than me. I do think there needs to be some controls on whether it's super intelligence or, what is it, ASI, AGI or something. There's got to be some.
ASI is artificial
we need some governing regulator devices in here, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But, the fact of the matter is the people that are inclined to do something not good with it, you can't control their regulator.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a big question. This is a really big question right now. It's an AI-2027.com. It's also Tristan Harris, who was one of the great TED speakers this year. He's a friend of mine, he originally came out with that documentary, The Social Dilemma, about how social media was both a good and not good thing. He actually said on the documentary, it's a utopia and a dystopia in one. And I've certainly seen both sides of that. That is the question, do we need regulation for it or some type of global collaboration like Thomas Friedman and Craig said in the New York Times. They wrote about the one thing that the U.S. and China must agree on is how to work together on AI because of how powerful it is. And I think that's true. I think that's really true, that we need to find a way to globally collaborate on something that could literally lift up not just our species, but every being on Earth, including the replenishment of Mother Gaia itself. The ability to replenish the ozone, to clean up all the trash we have and turn that into light energy, and on and on and on. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And this has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks so much, brother. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure, and onward to tomorrow as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Part 2.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. You will see us continue this series. We're going to record it tomorrow, but it'll be released a little bit later. But I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks again for all the light you're giving me. All the shares. As you know, I'm doing this for impact. It's my love letter to humanity. And I really appreciate everything you're doing to get the word out so more and more people can experience this and have their own type of awakening or journey to start their own company or journey to join one of the companies or initiatives that have been profiled here by the many amazing guests you've already seen. Thanks so much.